Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about whether or not it is anti-Semitic to be America first. Do you hate Jewish people if you want to put the interest of the United States over any other country? Not just one specific tiny country, but any country. Apparently, according to the Israel Firsters, people, idiots like Dave Rubin, apparently that makes you anti Semitic. But before we get into all of that, I want you to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever the hell you like listening to your podcasts. I would really freaking appreciate it. I got some big things planned for the channel on YouTube at the very least. I think I have a documentary in the works, a little mini documentary, so that's something to look forward to. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to release it, but it pertains to the Trump coalition and how the Israel First crowd has sort of destroyed the Trump coalition. So should be good. It's in the works right now, and I'll give you an update when I think the release date will happen. So, like I said, I want to talk about whether or not it's anti-Semitic if you want to put America first. Because you've seen a big attack from the Israel Firsters, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Josh Hammer, Mark Levin, etc., going hard against Tucker Carlson because Tucker had the gall to, interview Nick Fuentes and for them to discuss why it's good to put the United States first over other countries. Not just Israel, any other country. That's not anti-Semitic. That's just duh. Everyone who lives in the United States, who works for the United States, who's part of the government of the United States, the priority should be the United States, not fucking Israel. Whether you're Jewish or not, by the way, if you're an American and you're Jewish, America should be your number one priority. That doesn't mean you can't care about Israel, obviously. There are other ethnicities of people who care about other countries besides Jewish people. It's not unique to Jews. But you still have to put America first, even if you care about other countries. I'm Slavic. I care about, Serbia, which is where much of my family comes from, the old Yugoslavia whole area. But I would never put them over the United States, even though my grandma's from there. Because I'm an American. I care about the United States. That's my number one priority. But you're starting to see this growing sentiment on what I call the Israel Firsters. Again, people like Ben Shapiro, Josh Hammer, Dave Rubin, who are essentially calling Tucker Carlson anti-Semitic. And not just anti-Semitic, but a vile human being. Just because Tucker had the gall of having a conversation with the very influential conservative commentator, Nick Fuentes. And the fact that Tucker's been critical of Israel because Israel lost its fucking mind over the past 2 years and how they handled the Gaza situation. If Israel had just went to get their hostages, bombed Hamas for 6 months and then stopped, Israel wouldn't be such a big topic these days. I mean, Israel was not a topic at all during the first Trump administration because more or less, if you go into the specifics, it's a little bit unclear. But if more or less, Israel was well behaved during Trump's first term, so it really wasn't an issue. That's why it didn't create a crack in the MAGA coalition because Israel wasn't doing anything to make them a hot topic. Again, they were still doing illegal settlements, and I'm not saying they were behaving well overall, but it was much more tame than what has happened over the last 2 years during the end of the Biden administration and the first year of the second Trump administration. But so the Israel Firsters are going crazy on Tucker Carlson pretty much ever since. Let's be honest, they're not mad at Tucker because he interviewed Fuentes. They don't like that he did it, obviously. They made that very clear. But really, when you started to see this big sort of divide in MAGA was when Trump was starting to think about bombing Iran. And Tucker, to his great credit, went on a personal, and this is a joke, a personal jihad, no pun intended, a personal jihad to try to prevent the administration from doing that, or at the very least making it clear to them that there was going to be a big political price if Trump actually bombed Iran at the behest of Israel. He wasn't the only one to do that, by the way. Charlie Kirk also was making it clear to the administration that young people were not going to be supportive of Trump bombing Iran. And then later, Charlie Kirk got shot. You take that for what you will. I'm not even going to get into that. But so we only have one person now who had any sort of influence on the Trump administration on the anti-war populist side of the equation, who had direct access to the president and the vice president. I mean, there are others. I don't want to be disingenuous, but Tucker was certainly the most prominent as a public figure. Like I said, the other one got shot. R.I.P. Charlie Kirk. But that's when you really started to see this divide between Tucker and the Ben Shapiro wings of the Republican Party. Now, the divide has always been there, not just in foreign policy. I mean, famously, like 5 years ago, Tucker was on Ben Shapiro's podcast. And there's this famous exchange when Ben was basically like, well, you wouldn't stop progress, right? Like, you wouldn't prevent driverless cars. And Tucker was like, well, of course I would, because the vast majority of non-college educated men drive for a living. So the social costs of getting rid of all these drivers so we can implement driverless cars would be terrible for the country. And then Ben was like, Ben didn't have a real response to that. It made him look like a jerk. So this divide has never just been about Israel. There's always been sort of a divide between just like neocons and, the populist side of the Republican Party. Populists versus neocons. So the divide has always been there to some degree, but, when Trump campaigned pretty much for 10 years as the anti-war candidate, he bragged about how he didn't start any wars during his first term. You can't then just start a war at the behest of another country and expect no blowback, not just from the voters, but your populist defenders over the last 10 years. Not just Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then you have the Israel Firsters attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene because, again, she didn't want Trump. She doesn't want Trump doing things just for the benefit of Israel. She wants Trump to do things for the benefit of the United States, for the country. And, it shows you how loyal Trump is. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been one of the most loyal Trump supporters in Congress ever since she got in. And then, the last 2 days, he's been viciously attacking her, saying that no one cares about her, calling her a traitor. Why? Because she wants to release the Epstein files? Because she's not supportive of putting the interest of Israel over the interest of the United States? Again, it shows you how loyal Trump is. It's pretty depressing to think about, honestly. The fact that we're 10 years into this whole movement, this whole MAGA movement, and we can't get Trump to be consistent with his foreign policy, with the principles he laid out during his first campaign about putting America first. He's still endorsing people like Lindsey Graham. How embarrassing is that? Look, on a personal level, I love the president. I love Trump. I was 15 when he first announced he was running back in 2015. I've loved him. I still love him. But man, like the fact that I thought we would have made great progress by now. I thought Trump wouldn't be endorsing these ridiculous establishment candidates. But no, we're still here. And he's attacking people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie. I mean, whatever you think about Thomas Massie, he's a very principled anti-war voice. And also, he attacked Thomas Massie for being remarried. It's like, dude, really, Trump? You're gonna attack someone for remarrying after his wife passed away a year and a half ago? You're gonna attack that guy for getting remarried now? What the fuck? You were cheating on your first wife with Marla well before you got the divorce. You've been married 3 times. What are we doing here? It's just gross. Again, when Trump does stuff like that, it from the right-wing perspective, that's how, you got to remember, that's how the left sees Trump. When Trump attacks Thomas Massie like that. The left, that's how they view Trump as a bully who will attack people unfairly. And when he does that to Thomas Massie, the right gets sort of a reality check of how the left sees him. Now, I think Trump has many other good qualities that outweigh it, but it is sort of good to remind ourselves why the left doesn't like Trump, and what he did to Thomas Massey is sort of a good example of how they view Trump. It's just a bully, fundamentally. And Trump can be a bully. Again, there's other good qualities, but we have to be honest about it. So this sort of leads us into the main thing I want to get into. And sort of the meat of the video I want to get into is J.D. Vance. Right now, the Israel First people are starting to circle the wagons regarding J.D. Vance. And it sort of makes sense why. J.D. Vance is a principled anti-war vice president. He served in the military. He understands the horror of war. And he's talked about it so eloquently about how, we sent our young boys to die. And then when they got back, America had been destroyed by disastrous trade policy. That's sort of his story. And it's why it was a natural fit to be Trump's running mate the second time around. But if people may not remember, the GOP establishment, the neocons, people like Ben Shapiro, they didn't want him to pick J.D. Vance. They wanted Trump to pick Marco Rubio to be his vice president. And people forget there was a big sort of internal fight at the time about who Trump was going to pick. And luckily, people like Donald Trump Jr., Tucker Carlson, these are the people that pretty much convinced Trump that you have to go with Vance. And reportedly, this was, I believe, reported in Politico the other day, Tucker even told Trump at the time that if you pick Marco Rubio, you'll probably be assassinated. And then later, Trump was nearly assassinated at Butler. So maybe that was the reason Trump ended up picking Vance. I don't know. So there's no coincidence in life. Let's just be honest. Well, sometimes there are, but you get the point. So there's always been the GOP establishment, the neocons, the Israel Firsters. There's always been sort of there's always been tension there between them and Vance. Because Vance is almost a truer believer in Trump's own agenda than Trump is. I mean, you kind of hate to say that, but it's true. And there's been a big uproar to try to get J.D. Vance to condemn Tucker Carlson. And this is partly because apparently Tucker Carlson has a son who works for J.D. Vance. And you've had people attacking J.D. Vance for not condemning Tucker Carlson and not trying to get rid of his son from working in the administration. And you had a quote-unquote investigative journalist who is a self-described Zionist on Twitter, or X, attack J.D. Vance and for having Tucker Carlson's son work for him. And this is what she said. Today we learned that Tucker Carlson's brother idolizes Nick Fuentes. Racism and anti-Semitism is a Carlson family trait. Is Tucker's son Buckley, who serves as J.D. Vance's top aide, also a vile bigot? ? America deserves to know how deep the Carlson's family, ethnic, and religious hatred runs. End of quote. So that's a terrible tweet. You're basically attacking JD's son for no reason. She even acknowledges that she has no basis to think that his son is a Nick Fuentes supporter or a fan. And even if he was, who gives a shit? He can listen to whoever the hell he wants. But then JD got back to her publicly on X and with a brutal takedown. It was fucking glorious. And I'll read you what JD had to say. Luckily, unlike Trump, JD's posts are not 10 trillion paragraphs long because he's on X. This journalist who has decided to obsessively attack a staffer in his 20s because she doesn't like the views of his father. Every time I see a public attack on Buckley, it's a complete lie. And yes, I noticed every person with an agenda who unfairly attacks a good person who does a great job for me. Sloan, this is the journalist, describes herself as a defender of Judeo-Christian values. Is it a Judeo-Christian value to lie about someone you don't know? Not in any church I ever spent time in. I have an extraordinary tolerance for disagreements and criticism from the various people in our coalition. But I am a very loyal person, and I have zero tolerance for scumbags attacking my staff. And yes, everyone who I've seen attack Buckley is a scumbag who lies. So great statement defending Tucker's son, defending, like you said, different strands of the coalition of the conservative movement. Great statement by Vance, and really nothing you can disagree with. But then fucking Dave Rubin decides to, make his opinion known for some reason. And this is what he says in response to Vance's post. Mr. VP, I submit this respectfully. You are totally right. Nobody should be judged for their parents' words or actions. But, and I think you know this, the very people relentlessly attacking Jews now have Indians next up on the docket. And that includes your wife, even if she eventually converts to Christianity. So yes, Tucker can interview whoever he wants, his brother can post garbage memes all day, and his son, who may just be fine, can work for the vice president. But I think people are asking you to stand up when you see something evil. While I know you are trying to hold an increasingly fractured coalition together, you were elected to be a leader, not follow the whims of the trolls. And since they eventually will turn on your own family at some point, you might want to get ahead of it. These are my 2 cents, and I will continue to defend all the good things you and President Trump are doing regardless, something that this crew of people never do. This guy's such a fucking faggot. And then he goes on to show a picture of him with JD, and then shows a screenshot of Tucker's brother making fun of Israel Firsters. And then, Rubin goes on to imply that you should listen to me because we took a photo together, basically. So, and that's just one example of the Israel First people, which Dave Rubin is. All he cares is about Israel first. That's just an example of the pressure that's being put on JD to condemn not Tucker's brother, Tucker himself. But I don't think JD Vance thinks Tucker's done anything evil. That's the funny thing. He's like, Dave Rubin's like, you should condemn evil, JD. That's my gay Dave Rubin voice. Condemn evil, JD. And I don't think JD thinks Tucker's done anything evil. He just interviewed someone. All he's advocated is putting America first, even putting the interest of the United States over the interest of Israel. I know that's so controversial, but that's all Tucker believes. But this is just another example of the pressure being put on JD. Here's another example. Jake Tapper, the guy who was pretending Joe Biden was cognitively fine until the debate, he apparently reached out to JD's office about Tucker and Fuentes, and I have a clip of it, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
Fuentes or Carlson, or even condemned either of them. Vice President J.D. Vance, considered the next leader in the MAGA line of succession. He's no stranger to questions about Republicans espousing anti-Semitism in the last few months, following the Young Republicans texting scandal, which was first reported by Politico, which included one message where one of the young Republicans said, quote, "I love Hitler." Vice President Vance characterized those expressing outrage as, quote, "pearl clutching." And the vice president repeatedly referred to the participants as kids, even though the ages of the people in the group range from 18 to 40. Fuentes is, of course, a Nazi of a more loathsome order than those on that text chain, and he has a history of going after not just Jews, but Vice President Vance. He said a number of nasty things about his wife. Vance himself called Fuentes a total loser in a 2024 CBS interview before the election, after Fuentes attacked his wife, Usha Vance, and her Indian heritage. Here's just one of these vile moments. A quick warning to our viewers. This condemnation of Vance by Fuentes is not pleasant to listen to.
Now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet who named his son Vivek.
Now, this week and last, I repeatedly asked Vance's office for any comment about this internal war about Fuentes, specifically about Tucker Carlson platforming Fuentes, and there was no response. This weekend, Vance did weigh in on something related to this issue. It had to do with another member of the Carlson family, Tucker's son, Buckley, who works for Vance. And Vice President Vance, attacked just some rando on Twitter as a, quote, scumbag, because this woman claimed that Tucker's brother idolizes Nick Fuentes and questioned whether Tucker's son, Buckley, who works for Vance, is a vile bigot, too. We here at CNN have absolutely no idea if Tucker's relatives feel any way about Fuentes.
What a chat response by Vance, by the way. To not even get back to fucking fake Tapper. fucking based. We love JD. We love JD. And also, let's just be honest, the clip that Tapper played of Fuentes, that's pretty funny. I don't support making fun of JD's wife, but it is. This is why Fuentes is popular. He's very funny. What can I say? I saw some people, some of their comments about my podcast from yesterday about Fuentes, and people made the point, well, maybe Fuentes isn't anti-Semitic, but again, the problem with Fuentes is he's very funny, and sometimes it's hard to tell when he's joking or not. If you listen to that clip, he sounds kind of racist, even though I do think he's not being serious. So I just wanted to make that clear for some of the comments I was seeing yesterday on YouTube. But so again, there's all this pressure being put on JD to condemn Fuentes, to condemn Tucker. And Fuentes, you can understand to some degree. He has, as Tapper played, Fuentes has said many controversial things with racial undertones. I mean, whether you like him or not, you have to acknowledge that. But Tucker hasn't. Tucker just wants the best for the country, and he doesn't think putting the interest of Israel over our country benefits our country. By definition, it doesn't benefit our country. No two countries are going to always have the same interests. At some point, the United States' interests and Israel's interests do not, they will cross. They will no longer be together. Okay? They will conflict at some point because we're two different countries. No two countries' interests never conflict with each other. So when our interests align, can we be supportive of Israel? Yeah, sure. But when they conflict, we shouldn't reflexively go with the interests of Israel. And that's what the Israel First crowd wants. That's what this whole war, as even Dave Rubin acknowledged, that's what this fracturing of the coalition is all about. Is you have people in the conservative movement who seemingly care more, for whatever reason, care more about Israel than the United States, at least to some degree. And J.D. Vance, if he really is who he says he is, someone who is a populist, who cares about the United States, presumably he will put the interest of the United States over the interest of Israel. And the Israel First people know this. It's why they didn't want him to be Trump's VP. And this is what's happening now is Trump is term limited. So we're starting to see basically what I call the silent primary. And what the silent primary means is people are starting to dig into different coalitions within the right. So when the actual Republican primary happens, people already have the battle lines drawn. Like you even see, there was a report yesterday that Ted Cruz is seriously considering running in 28 as the Israel First candidate. Yeah, good luck with that, Ted. But he's talking to donors, people are aligning. So we're in the silent primary phase, and the neocons, the Israel Firsters, they want to take the country back. It's not good enough for them to use Trump as to mask their Israel First policies, their anti-America policies, because Trump is not ideological, and that's good and bad. It's not good because he's not ideological to the policies that he ran on, but it's also good because when you have neocons trying to force him to do things, Trump isn't committed to those ideas either. That's why Trump, whether you like him or not, he can be sort of erratic with his policy and inconsistent, and it doesn't always seem like his policy is perfectly coherent because he's not an ideologue. And that, like I said, that's good and bad. But JD seems like much more of an ideologue. So the Israel Firsters cannot allow Vance to get into the White House as the president, and that's what this war is about. It's about the primary. It's about Israel. It's about putting America first. And the 28 Republican primary, I think, is going to be much more brutal than people think. I don't think Vance is going to have a cakewalk because I think very powerful people are going to try to prevent him from becoming president and the Republican nominee because they want the Republican Party to go back to the George W. Bush neocon Israel First Party. And they've tried doing it with Trump to some degree, but Trump, he's not committed ideologically to anything. So it just doesn't work the way that they want it. So we'll see what happens. But there's a war over J.D. Vance, that's apparent. And there's a war about whether or not we're going to be allowed to put America first. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for the show today. Again, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. I appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.